Imagine this: a simple penny, the kind you toss in a jar or lose in your couch cushions, suddenly becoming worth more than most people's homes. Hard to believe? Not when you hear the story of the 1971 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, it looks ordinary. Abraham Lincoln's familiar face, the memorial on the back, the date. 1971. Nothing about it screams treasure. And yet, this coin hides a mystery that has collectors scrambling, dealers whispering, and ordinary people checking their change with shaking hands. Because one small oversight at the U.S. Mint turned this penny into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. The 1971 Lincoln penny was supposed to carry a mint mark if it came from Denver or San Francisco. But in a rare mistake, some were struck without any mint mark at all, leaving them completely blank under the date. This tiny omission changed everything. What most people saw as a 1-cent coin, experts now saw as a $1 million marvel. When the first of these rare 1971 no-mint mark pennies surfaced, dealers didn't believe it at first. They thought it had to be damaged, or maybe even a counterfeit. But as more turned up, confirmed by grading services and authenticated under magnifying glass, the truth came crashing in. These were real U.S. Mint errors, and their value shot through the roof. Collectors were shocked. People who had drawers filled with 1971 pennies suddenly wondered, could one of mine be the jackpot? Auctions lit up with bidding wars. One lucky finder turned a penny he had held onto for decades into nearly $1.1 million. One man's pocket change had become $1 million miracle. Most of these coins are still out there, hiding in plain sight. They aren't in museums. They aren't locked away by the government. They're sitting quietly in people's coin jars, in dusty boxes in attics, or being passed from cashier to customer without anyone realizing the fortune in their hands. But why exactly are they worth so much? The answer lies in the strange world of rarity and error collecting. Coins become valuable not just because of age, but because of mistakes, errors that weren't supposed to happen. The 1971 no-mint mark penny is the definition of this. Its flaw is so subtle, so easy to overlook, that most people will never notice. But that's exactly why it's priceless. Because once you know what to look for, you're in on a secret that could change your life. The no-mint mark under the date is the first clue. But not every penny without a mint mark is special. In fact, most pennies made in Philadelphia in 1971 had no mint mark at all, and they're only worth face value. So what separates the $1 million coins from the ordinary? The difference is in their striking quality, rarity, and in some cases, double die errors that occurred during minting. Some show doubling in the date, the word liberty, or even "I in God we trust." These rare variations are what make collectors' jaws drop. Imagine finding one of these in your pocket. Your heart would skip a beat. Would you even believe it was real? The stories are everywhere. People stumbling across forgotten rolls of pennies, opening them, and realizing they had a small fortune staring back at them. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these coins, because every verified piece skyrockets in value. The average person still doesn't know about this. Every day, thousands of these pennies are handled, ignored, and spent without a second thought. It's like finding gold but not knowing what gold looks like. And that's why I'm telling you this today. Because if you know the signs, you might catch the treasure that everyone else is overlooking. First, grab every 1971 penny you can find. Hold it under bright light and look closely under the date. If there's no mint mark, don't jump to conclusions. Check for the sharpness of the strike, unusual doubling, and a crisp condition. The most valuable examples are in pristine, uncirculated states, coins that somehow survived decades without a single scratch. If you're unsure, send it to a grading service like PCGS or NGC. That single step could turn your penny into a $1 million payday. Think about this for a second. A coin that cost 1 cent to make now trading hands for more than $1 million. That's the magic of numismatics, the hidden world of treasures in plain sight. And you might be holding the next one right now. Collectors were stunned when the first 1971 no-mint mark penny hit $1.1 million at auction. But experts believe the price could climb even higher, as fewer and fewer of these coins surface and the demand continues to rise. The question is, Who will be the next lucky finder? So the next time you're emptying your pockets, rolling up change, or glancing at the pennies at the bottom of a drawer, stop and look closely. That dull, ordinary coin could be the life-changing discovery that most people only dream about. The year was 1982. Ronald Reagan was president, Michael Jackson's Thriller was taking over the world, and gas was still under $1. Nobody was paying much attention to pennies back then. They were small, forgettable, and often overlooked. But something happened that year, something the U.S. Mint didn't intend. And out of billions of ordinary coins, a few extraordinary mistakes slipped through the cracks. One of those mistakes created the legendary 1982 D-penny, a coin so rare, so mysterious, that today it can be worth as much as $1.20 million. To answer that, you have to understand the chaos of 1982. That was the year the Mint changed the composition of the penny. For decades, Lincoln cents were made mostly of copper. But copper prices skyrocketed. The cost of the metal inside the penny was actually worth more than the coin itself. So, the Mint made a bold decision, switched to cheaper zinc coated with a thin copper plating. But the transition wasn't smooth. Mistakes happened. Different dies, different planchets, and different presses collided. And that's where the $1,000,000 penny was born. Collectors call it the 1982 D small date penny on a copper planchet. Only a handful are known to exist. Think about that for a second. Billions of pennies were struck in 1982, but just a few, a microscopic fraction, carry this minting error. That's why it's worth a fortune. But here's where the story takes an unbelievable turn. One man in Colorado thought he had just another penny. It sat in his change jar for years. Nothing special. Until one day, he heard whispers about a rare 1982 D-penny. Out of curiosity, he pulled out his old coins, weighed them carefully, and couldn't believe what he saw. His penny was heavier than the zinc versions. He took it to experts, and when the results came back, the coin world was stunned. He wasn't holding a penny. He was holding a ticket to a $1,000,000 Miracle.at auction. The bidding was fierce. Dealers and collectors from across the country tried to get their hands on it. The final price? Over $1 million for a single cent. And just like that, a coin that almost got spent on a pack of gum turned into life-changing money. But this is where most people get it wrong. Not every 1982 D-penny is valuable. In fact, almost all of them are just worth 1 cent. The difference lies in the tiniest details. And here's the cliffhanger most collectors miss. The secret isn't just the D mint mark. It's the date style and the weight. You have to look closely. There are two styles of the number 2 in the date, the large date and the small date. The rare $1,000,000 version is the small date. The top of the 2 is sharp and angled, not curved and bold like the large date. Put it on a scale. A regular zinc penny from 1982 weighs about 2.5 grams. But the copper version, the mistake, tips the scale at about 3.1 grams. That extra fraction of a gram could mean the difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth over $1 million. Collectors were shocked when this discovery first hit the news. Suddenly, coin jars across America were being emptied, magnifying glasses came out of drawers, and people began searching through their change like treasure hunters. Dealers rushed to advertise 1982 pennies. And still, the hunt continues today. Because nobody knows exactly how many of these rare copper small date pennies are still out there. And here's the thought that should keep you awake tonight. One of them could be sitting in your house. It could be buried in an old coffee can, lying at the bottom of a drawer, or hiding in a dusty jar of loose change. Most people will never notice. They'll spend it. They'll let it slip through their fingers. But a few lucky collectors? They'll find it. Here's what you need to do. Go through your 1982 pennies. Look for the D mint mark. Examine the date carefully. Check if it's the small date style. And most importantly, weigh it. If it comes in at 3.1 grams, congratulations, you may be holding a treasure that could make headlines. Remember, this isn't just a coin. It's a piece of history. It's a symbol of how the smallest detail, a single mistake at the mint, can turn an ordinary penny into $1 million masterpiece. And the next time you pick up a penny from the ground, don't ignore it. Don't assume it's worthless. Because the exact coin that could change your life forever might already be in your pocket. I'm talking about a simple Lincoln penny. A coin you've probably held thousands of times without ever giving it a second thought. But in 1961, at the Denver Mint, something unusual happened. A mistake so small, so easy to overlook, that it turned an ordinary copper cent into a collector's dream worth as much as $1.3 million. Most people who see this coin don't even know what they're holding. They toss it into a jar, slip it into a vending machine, or leave it rattling at the bottom of a drawer. But the truth is, this tiny piece of metal has shocked collectors, stunned dealers, and made ordinary people overnight millionaires. Now, here's the mystery. Why would a 1961 penny with a little D mint mark be worth so much money? The answer lies in a combination of minting errors, hidden varieties, and the sheer rarity of survival and pristine condition. Most of the pennies minted that year in Denver were struck by the billions. But once in a while, the minting presses misaligned, doubled the design, or left the smallest imperfections. A little doubling on the date. A distorted mint mark. A weak strike that only sharp eyes can catch. These so-called mistakes, barely noticeable to most, are what separate a common coin from $1 million miracle. One of these rare 1961 D pennies surfaced in near-perfect condition. The luster was flawless, the details razor-sharp, and the error unmistakable. Word spread quickly among collectors, and when it hit the auction block, it sold for a jaw-dropping price. The kind of money that turns a simple penny into a life-changing fortune. That sale made headlines. Dealers rushed to re-examine their inventories. Everyday people started digging through their old jars of change. And suddenly, everyone wanted a piece of the 1961 Denver minting mystery. Imagine this for a moment. You're cleaning out an old desk, emptying a coffee can of coins you haven't touched in decades. Among the dull brown pennies, one coin catches your eye. The date reads 1961. And just below it, a small D. To most people, it looks like any other penny. But to a trained eye, it could be the very coin that transforms your pocket change into a fortune. Collectors say the thrill of this discovery feels like winning the lottery. Dealers describe it as lightning striking in the world of numismatics. And those who've held one of these coins in their hand will tell you, it doesn't even feel real. How could something so small, so ordinary, carry a price tag of over $1 million? Yet it does, and here's the part most people miss. This penny doesn't just get its value from being old. Age alone doesn't guarantee fortune. It's the combination of condition, rarity, and those tiny minting quirks that set it apart. For the 1961 D penny, experts look for sharp details on Lincoln's portrait, clear definition in the lettering, and the telltale signs of doubling or a misplaced mint mark. If you've got one that shines like it was struck yesterday, you might just be sitting on a treasure. But here's where it gets even more dramatic. Many of these coins slipped through unnoticed for decades. They passed from register to pocket, from one generation to the next. Countless examples were lost, damaged, or melted down. That's why, when a high-grade survivor surfaces, collectors fight tooth and nail to own it. And that fight pushes prices into the stratosphere. One man discovered his coin by accident while sifting through an inherited coin collection. What he thought was just a common penny turned out to be one of the rarest varieties in existence. That single coin ended up selling for more than he'd ever made in a single year of work. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. But wait, here's the twist. Not every 1961 D penny will make you rich. In fact, most are worth just face value. The key is knowing exactly what to look for. Check the date carefully. Look for doubling on the numbers, especially the 1 and the 9. Examine the mint mark, the little d, under the date. If it looks slightly misplaced, tilted, or doubled, that's your first clue. And condition is everything. The shinier, the sharper, the more flawless it appears, the higher the value climbs. Collectors are stunned by how many of these coins are still out there, waiting to be found. Dealers are paying huge sums for confirmed examples. And ordinary people just like you are sitting on hidden fortunes without even realizing it. Tonight, when you empty your pockets or open that old jar of coins, pay attention. That little copper penny with a 1961 date and a Denver, D. mint mark could be worth up to $1.3 million. And here's the most important part. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now. Don't ignore it. Don't toss it away. Because what looks like just another Lincoln penny could be the key to a life-changing discovery. If you enjoyed this journey into the world of rare coins, make sure to subscribe. Because the next time I uncover a hidden treasure like this, you'll want to be the first to know. And remember, the coin that changes your life might already be in your pocket. But one day, one of these pennies shocked the world, selling for a fortune so massive, it left collectors speechless. I'm talking about the 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin worth up to $1.4 million. And the most chilling part? You might already have one sitting in your pocket right now. In 1978, the U.S. Mint struck billions of Lincoln memorials since. By all appearances, they were nothing special. A simple copper coin with Lincoln's solemn face on the front and the Grand Lincoln Memorial on the back. No silver, no gold, just a penny. The kind of coin you wouldn't even bother bending down to pick up on the sidewalk. But hiding in that mountain of copper cents was something no one saw coming. The Philadelphia Mint, the one responsible for the no-mint mark pennies, made a tiny but powerful mistake. A subtle misstep in the minting process created coins that were anything but ordinary. These weren't your everyday 1-cent pieces. They had unique flaws, rare characteristics, and some were struck with such unusual precision or error that they became treasures worth more than cars, houses, even someone's lifetime savings. And then, it happened. A coin dealer came across one of these elusive 1978 no-mint mark pennies. At first glance, it seemed normal, dull copper, a bit of wear, nothing to catch your eye. But under the magnifying glass, a detail emerged that changed everything. The strike was flawless, the fields mirrored like proof, and the surfaces virtually untouched. Collectors realized this wasn't just a penny, it was a miracle of survival. When it hit the auction block, jaws dropped. What some people thought was a common cent suddenly skyrocketed in price. Bidders fought for it, numbers climbing higher and higher until the hammer came down at over $1 million. That's right, 1 cent turned into $1.4 million. Collectors were stunned, dealers were scrambling, and everyday people began digging through their change jars, hoping lightning might strike twice. It isn't just rarity. It's the perfect storm, condition, errors, and history. Some 1978 pennies came with doubled dies, where Lincoln's features appeared doubled, like a ghostly second image. Others had striking off-center errors, with part of the design missing entirely. And the rarest of the rare? Flawless examples preserved in pristine condition, coins that somehow escaped decades of circulation, surviving as though they had been frozen in time. The mint mark. Or rather, the lack of one. Philadelphia pennies from 1978 carry no mint mark, and while that sounds normal, it means every single detail on the coin must be checked. Tiny variations in the lettering, ghost-like doubling on "In God We Trust," or even a razor-sharp strike with proof-like surfaces can turn a penny worth 1 cent into a once-in-a-lifetime jackpot. One man in Ohio nearly threw his 1978 penny into a parking lot coin tray, until something about the shine caught his eye. He kept it, had it appraised, and that single penny later sold for enough to pay off his mortgage. Imagine that. One coin, 1 second of hesitation, and his life was changed forever. And here's where it gets even more exciting. Millions of 1978 pennies are still floating around today. In bank rolls, in change jars, tucked into old coffee cans and basements. Most people glance at them and think nothing of it. But a few lucky ones, they'll spot the difference. They'll recognize the doubled lettering, the sharp uncirculated details, or the rare proof-like shine. And when they do, they won't be holding a penny anymore. They'll be holding a fortune. So how can you tell if your 1978 penny is worth $1 million? Start with the basics. Flip it over and check for unusual errors. Look closely at the date, the motto, and Lincoln's profile. Any doubling, any misalignment, any unusual shine could mean you're looking at something extraordinary. Then, check its condition. If it looks like it's never been touched, never been scratched, you might have one of the rarest survivors from that year. Collectors today are obsessed with finding these coins. Dealers are offering thousands, even tens of thousands, for high-grade examples. And for the lucky few, those prices can climb into the millions. Think about it, one coin, hiding in plain sight, could change your life. That 1978 penny you tossed in a drawer years ago might be the very one collectors are chasing right now. And the only thing standing between you and $1 million is whether you take the time to look. The year was 1949. America was just beginning to rebuild after the trials of World War II. Gasoline was only 20 cents a gallon, Harry Truman was president, and a penny could actually buy something. But within the U.S. Mint, among the billions of Lincoln wheat pennies struck that year, a rare and costly mistake slipped through the cracks. A mistake that decades later would shock collectors, dealers, and the entire coin world. At first glance, the 1949 Lincoln penny doesn't seem unusual. Abraham Lincoln's profile stares proudly from the obverse, while the reverse bears the famous wheat stalks that collectors love. No silver, no gold, no precious metals. Just copper. But here's where the story takes its breathtaking turn. Hidden in the details most people never even look at, some of these pennies left the mint without a mint mark, creating a rarity so staggering that when one surfaced at auction, it commanded up to $1.5 million. Think about that for a moment. A penny minted in 1949, stripped of a tiny letter, suddenly transformed into one of the most desirable coins in U.S. history. And yet thousands of people may have held one in their hand, spent it on a stick of gum, or dropped it into a jar without ever knowing the fortune they let slip away. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Word spread that a 1949 no-mint mark penny, the kind that looks so ordinary, had shattered expectations at auction. Collectors were in disbelief. Dealers scrambled to confirm the details. The truth was undeniable. The smallest variation, a missing mint mark, had created a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. Because mint marks are like fingerprints. They tell us where a coin was struck: Philadelphia, Denver, San Francisco. In 1949, most pennies bore a mark, stamped proudly under the date. But when one left without that little letter, it became a ghost, an accident, a mystery, and ultimately, $1 million miracle. And here's the part that sends shivers down the spine. These coins weren't supposed to survive. Quality checks were strict, and yet a handful slipped through. For decades, they hid in plain sight, circulating from register to pocket, from purse to drawer. A kid may have spent it at a soda fountain. A veteran may have flipped it to decide his luck. Then, years later, tucked away in someone's coin collection, the truth finally came out. But what makes this penny even more fascinating is its condition. Ordinary circulated examples might still hold surprising value, but the true $1 million paydays come when the coin has been preserved, brilliant, lustrous, untouched by time. That's when collectors open their wallets, when auction houses hold their breath, when a simple penny suddenly becomes more valuable than most people's homes. Collectors were shocked. Dealers couldn't believe their eyes. A 1949 penny, something everyone assumed was common, had become a star. And every time another example appears, it ignites a frenzy of excitement, as if the coin world is holding its breath to see just how high the bidding will climb. Now here's where you need to pay attention, because this could be the difference between an ordinary cent and a life-changing fortune. If you have a 1949 penny, hold it close. Look just below the date. Do you see a small letter, D, for Denver or S for San Francisco? If you do, you've got a coin, but not the coin. But if there's nothing there, no letter at all, you might just be staring at a fortune hiding in copper. This tiny absence, invisible to most, is the reason a simple penny is worth over $1 million. And if you don't look closely, you'll miss it. Many people already have. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin, and collectors whisper about it like it's a legend. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle, and it could happen again. You just need to know what to look for. So tonight, when you go through your drawer, your jar of coins, your old piggy bank, remember this story. That little 1949 Lincoln wheat penny you've ignored for years could be the very coin that rewrites your future. It could be the coin that proves once again that treasure still hides in the most ordinary places. The 1949 no-mint mark penny. Worth up to $1.5 million. Rare, shocking, unforgettable. And it could be sitting in your collection right now. It's the 1971 Lincoln penny. A coin so ordinary you've probably seen thousands of them pass through your hands. But one rare version, born out of minting mistakes and secrecy, is worth more than most people's homes. Picture this. It's 1971. Richard Nixon is president. Gas is just 36 cents a gallon. And the U.S. Mint in San Francisco is cranking out pennies by the hundreds of millions. To the average person, they were nothing special. But buried in that mountain of copper was a mistake so shocking, collectors decades later would call it one of the most valuable pennies of the modern era. And how could such a tiny coin hold a value of over $1.6 million? The answer lies in a detail so subtle, most people overlook it every single day. Here's the twist. While the San Francisco Mint was producing proof coins, coins with mirror-like surfaces meant for collectors, a small number of them slipped out with a double die error. That means the design, especially in the words and the date, looks as though it's been stamped twice. One look at Liberty, or In God We Trust, on the rarest versions, and you'll see the doubling clear as day. That small mistake, invisible to most people in 1971, transformed an ordinary penny into a $1 million miracle. Collectors were stunned when the first one came to auction. What seemed like just another proof coin shattered records. Dealers whispered, prices climbed, and suddenly, everyone was asking the same question. Could one of these rare treasures be sitting in their own collection? But the story doesn't stop there. One collector who had held on to his 1971 penny for decades finally decided to have it authenticated. What he discovered left him speechless. The grading service confirmed it wasn't just any 1971 penny. It was one of the finest examples of the double die ever found. When it sold, jaws dropped. That tiny copper coin, just 1 cent to the U.S. Mint, brought in a staggering sum, climbing toward the $1.6 million mark. And here's the part that sends chills down every collector's spine. There are more out there. Not many, but enough that if you know what to look for, your life could change with just a single discovery. Think about it. You could be sifting through an old box of proof sets in the attic. You could stumble across one at a flea market for a couple bucks. And without realizing it, you might be staring at one of the most valuable pennies in American history. That's the real challenge. The doubling isn't always obvious to the untrained eye. People toss these coins into jars, into drawers, even into parking meters, never knowing what they just gave away. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. Look carefully at the inscriptions. On the rare double die, Liberty has a shadow, a ghost-like second image. The date, 1971, shows doubling as well. Even the famous phrase, "In God We Trust," looks doubled, almost as if it's vibrating. If you see that on a 1971 penny, stop everything. You may have just uncovered a fortune, and don't be fooled by worn examples or faint doubling that might look like damage. That's where most people make mistakes. Real double dies have sharp, clear lines in the doubling, not blurred, not stretched. That's the difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth $1 million. Collectors today are racing to find them. Dealers are paying top dollar. And every time one surfaces, it reignites the frenzy. Because each discovery proves the legend true, the U.S. Mint made a mistake in 1971, and that mistake became one of the greatest treasures in modern coin collecting. So, how do you know if you have one? First, check your proof sets from 1971. If you see the Mint mark below the date, that's your starting point. Then, under a magnifying glass, study the letters and numbers for doubling. If it matches known examples, you could be holding a coin that changes your life forever. Imagine this. You open a dusty drawer, pick up a penny that's been sitting there for 50 years, and suddenly realize it's worth over $1 million. That's not just a coin. That's a once-in-a-lifetime miracle. And here's the final thought I'll leave you with. The 1971 Lincoln penny may look ordinary, but it's anything but. It's a reminder that hidden value can be sitting in plain sight, waiting for the right pair of eyes to uncover it. And yes, this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. I'm talking about the 1960 D-Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that, under the right conditions, can be worth up to $1.7 million. And here's the crazy part. Most people walk right past it every single day. Back in 1960, something unusual happened inside the U.S. Mint in Denver. Machines were rolling, copper planchets were being struck, and Abraham Lincoln's familiar face was being pressed into history once again. But in the middle of all that routine minting, a mistake slipped through. A mistake so small, you'd barely notice it if you weren't looking closely. Yet this tiny error transformed an ordinary penny into one of the most sought-after treasures in American coinage. Collectors were shocked when the first examples appeared. They noticed that some 1960 pennies had strange doubling, unusual designs, and inconsistencies between the small date and large date varieties. The Denver Mint mark only added to the mystery. At first, nobody thought much of it. After all, it was just a penny, right? But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. At an auction, one of these rare 1960 D pennies sold for an unimaginable price, climbing past hundreds of thousands of dollars before hammering down at a value that stunned even veteran dealers. Stories began to circulate of ordinary people finding these pennies tucked away in change jars, old piggy banks, and forgotten rolls from the bank. One man's pocket change quite literally became $1 million miracle. The answer lies in the details, and this is where most people miss it. On some 1960 D pennies, you'll find the rare small date over large date variety, a minting blunder where two different date styles overlap. Combine that with strong doubling, crisp condition, and the Denver Mint mark, and you've got a coin that dealers are rushing to get their hands on. You're going through an old coin jar, half asleep, just looking for quarters for the laundry. You pull out a penny, notice the date, and set it aside. Weeks later, you learn that same penny could be worth over $1 million. That kind of discovery changes lives. It changes futures. It turns pocket change into a retirement plan, and the thrill doesn't stop there. Every time another example surfaces, headlines light up. Rare 1960 D penny sells for record-breaking price. $1 million penny discovered in old family collection. Each story fuels more curiosity, more treasure hunting, more people searching their drawers and closets, hoping lightning will strike twice. But here's the catch: not every 1960 D penny is valuable. In fact, most of them are worth only a cent. The difference between a coin worth 1 cent and one worth $1.7 million comes down to the tiniest of details. You need to look for the small date variety, where the numbers in the year appear slightly thinner, with the 0 perfectly round instead of oval, and the 6 sitting lower. When that small date overlaps a large date underneath, it creates the variety that collectors crave, and condition matters. A coin in worn, pocket-circulated shape won't fetch anywhere near the same price as a sharp, uncirculated example. Mint state quality, no scratches, no heavy wear, that's where the $1 million magic happens. The suspense of searching keeps collectors hooked. Dealers are hunting through boxes of unsearched pennies, estate sales, and old coin rolls, all praying to uncover that one life-changing piece. And here's the wildest part: many of these valuable 1960 D pennies have not yet been found. They're still out there, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone like you to recognize them. Think about it. How many times have you brushed off a penny, tossed it aside, or left it behind on the counter? What if one of those forgotten coins was the very piece that could transform your life forever? The truth is, you'll never know unless you look. So here's what to do. Grab that old coffee can of change. Dig out those coin rolls you've been ignoring. And when you find a 1960 penny with a D Mint mark, hold it up to the light. Study the date. Look for the small date variety, look for doubling, and pay attention to the shape of the numbers. Because the difference between a penny and $1,000,000 is right there in the details. And remember this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1,000,000. That's the story of the 1965 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks so plain, so common, that millions of people have handled it without ever knowing the truth. But here's the twist. This penny isn't just any penny. Hidden inside this simple piece of copper lies a story of mistakes at the U.S. Mint, collector obsession, and a market value that has stunned the coin world. We're talking about a single penny, worth up to $1.8 million. How could such an everyday coin hold so much value? Let's rewind to 1965. America was in the middle of change, literally. The mint was under pressure, silver was disappearing from coinage, and demand for new coins was exploding. Mistakes were inevitable. And somewhere, deep in the mint's machinery, an error occurred that gave birth to one of the most valuable pennies in American history. At first glance, the 1965 penny looks like nothing special. Abraham Lincoln's profile stares straight ahead, the familiar words, "In God we trust." Arch above him, Liberty, rests to his left, and the date 1965 sits proudly on the right. No mint mark. No obvious difference. Millions were struck exactly like this. So why in the world would one of these coins command nearly $2 million at auction? Here's where the mystery deepens. Most people don't realize that in 1965, the U.S. Mint temporarily removed mint marks to discourage coin hoarding. That means no D for Denver, no S for San Francisco. Every penny bore the same faceless look. Collectors at the time were furious, calling it a betrayal of tradition. But hidden among the billions of ordinary 1965 pennies, a few were struck with minute differences, planchet errors, double strikes, and unusual compositions. And those rare survivors? That's where the $1,000,000 magic comes in. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. One unassuming 1965 penny, pulled from circulation by a sharp-eyed collector, went to auction. Experts analyzed it, dealers whispered in disbelief, and when the hammer fell, it fetched over $1,000,000. The crowd was stunned. This wasn't a gold coin. It wasn't a commemorative issue. It was a penny anyone could have found in their change. Collectors were shocked. Dealers rushed to get their hands on this elusive coin. Stories began circulating, tales of ordinary Americans stumbling upon what looked like pocket change, only to discover that they were holding a fortune in copper. One man, as the story goes, nearly tossed his find into a parking meter before realizing the odd coloring and sharp strike marks weren't normal. That single glance saved him from giving away a coin worth more than a house. And here's the detail that makes this coin worth millions. Most people miss it. The valuable 1965 penny isn't just about the missing mint mark. It's about the way it was struck, the rare errors in metal composition, the razor-sharp die details, and in some cases, the unusual weight of the planchet. These tiny differences, invisible to the casual eye, are what separate a penny worth 1 cent from a penny worth $1.8 million. Think about it. Every day, people pass pennies on the ground. Kids throw them into fountains. Shoppers toss them into coin trays. And yet, right now, somewhere in America, another one of these rare 1965 no-mint mark Lincoln pennies could be sitting in an old coffee can, a forgotten drawer, or a dusty jar of loose change. But here's the real kicker: you could have one already. The trick is knowing what to look for. First, check the date, 1965. If there's no mint mark beneath the year, you're in the right territory. Next, weigh the coin. Some rare 1965 pennies were struck on leftover 95% copper planchets, while others were on transitional compositions. Any unusual weight could be a sign you've struck gold, or in this case, copper. And finally, examine the strike. Sharp, bold details, unusual die markings, or even a slight doubling could mean your coin is no ordinary penny. Collectors have learned the hard way. Countless 1965 pennies have slipped through the cracks because someone didn't know what to look for. And every time that happens, another life-changing treasure goes unnoticed. Imagine holding $1 million coin in your hand, only to spend it on a candy bar.so tonight. When you get home, dump out your change jar. Go through those old rolls of pennies. Look closely at every coin dated 1965. Because the next one you find could be the key to a fortune. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million.